Good evening, everybody, and welcome to a brand new feature that we have here on Spaced Out Radio, which we are calling the Angry Ghost Hunter. This is a collaboration of some great ghost hunters here on the West Coast of North America, led by Allison from A.G.H.O.S.T down in Seattle, Washington, along with his teammate Jacob Rice, and of course, MERLE from the Paranormal Road Trippers, Mike Morin, as he joins me for Ghosts of the Great White North here on Spaced Out Radio. Now, once a month, the final Wednesday of every month, we will join you from 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock Pacific time. That's 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern, where we are going to go over ghost hunting in general. Everything from how to investigate, what to do, what not to do, and how to be a good person in this field, because there's a lot of things that makes this crew angry when it comes to ghost hunting, and we're going to get into it starting right now. Well, let's bring in the team. Allison, Jacob Rice, MERLE. How you guys doing? Thank you so much for coming on in and starting this new feature on the Spaced Out Radio YouTube channel. Ross, this is all your brilliant idea, and I want to say a big thank you for putting this together.
Well, it's great to be doing this. I actually started this by doing a blog many years ago talking about a lot of the problems that we had in this field. And then that launched into being a regular in a magazine called Ghostly Voices. And then after that, I started doing a blog as well, a radio blog. And I did that for a while. And then unfortunately, I just got busy. And I know a lot of people have asked to bring this back. They really love the show. And I thought of you, the first person to ask, and so here we are back on the air.
Well, I'm so glad you're giving us this opportunity to do this, because with our ever-growing audience on YouTube, we're at 11,339 subscribers as of this show right now, and our numbers just keep going up. The fact that we can add this, I think, is great. And you know, Ross, you and I have had many a talk, same as MERLE and Jacob and I have had talks in regards to my loathing personally of the paranormal field. It's not that I dislike it. It's that it's just one of those fields that just seems to be all over the place. It's a mishmash of great people, educated people, along with people who think that they are going to be the next television star. And when we come down to it, it always comes down to solutions. It always comes down to what we are supposed to do when we are out in the field. What are we trying to solve? How are we trying to help? Right. These are questions that we are going to get to as we continue on with this monthly series.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Let's do it.
Yep. MERLE, let's introduce you for people who may not know you. You were at the Paranormal Road Trippers in Vancouver. How long have you been ghost hunting?
Well over 15 years now. I've been up and down the West Coast of Canada, the United States. Did some time in England where I investigated a little bit as well. Looking forward to doing this show because Ross and I have had a lot of conversations on things that are right and wrong as we feel our feelings in our field. So it'll be good.
And Jacob Rice, you're the newcomer to Spaced Out Radio. This will be your first time or maybe second time on it. And thank you for joining us on the Angry Ghost Hunter. You're a teammates of Ross. How did that happen?
So what happened was in a nutshell, I reviewed his ghost hunt on the USS Turner Joy as part of Spooked in Seattle. So my website, Ghostly Activities, dedicated to paranormal research, ghost hunting. One of the things I do is I'll take a tour and I'll tell you if it's legit or not, like if you're a real ghost hunter. So I signed up, I did the report. I was not the kindest.
He does not hold back.
I just laid it out as it was. And then Ross stalked me and contacted me a few days after that report went up and asked me to join a ghost. And I'm like, sure, why not?
Well, I just loved his open, honest approach. And that's what we need in this field, is people being open and honest. It's not about the sensationalism and, trying to scare people. And I just really saw the passion in how he approaches field, and I wanted him on my team.
Well, I don't blame you, because that's one thing that we see a lot of. There's a lot of ghost hunters out there, literally tens of thousands, for people who may not be ghost hunting. This is actually quite popular, and you wouldn't believe how many people are actually doing it. But there is a right way and a wrong way in doing this. We're going to hit some of those subjects over the next number of months when we come into this topic du jour of ghost hunting and we start to grow this show on our channel. Ross, I want to start with you here because you're the captain of this ship and I'm just the guy with the gray hair who knows how to talk behind a microphone. But for you, let's talk about locations, because one of the topics that we see a lot of in this field is people loving locations. They want to go to these very popular locations. They want to go to Waverly Hills or Alcatraz or Gettysburg. And it's like the mecca of paranormal for them to get there. Is this where we should be starting, or do we even have to leave home, as we're learning with the COVID virus, that the ghosts are just all around?
And they are everywhere. You don't have to, pull every dollar out of your wallet to try and hit a lot of these locations. And that's another thing too, that I've been in this field for a long time. And I remember back in the days where you could get into these places free, because they didn't have people hounding them to have the opportunity to ghost hunt. And now, because of the popularity of ghost hunting, of course, all these places, they're charging like $100 or more per person just to have a few hours on their property. So I always encourage people, hang out around your home. There's a lot of things you got to learn about if you want to pursue the field of paranormal. Just because you've watched every episode of Ghost Hunters or Ghost Adventures does not make you an expert in the field of ghost hunting. There's a lot of stuff that you don't see or know that happens in the background. And so I've always told people, you really got to start small. Don't get clients involved. That's the worst thing you could do when you're starting out, because you can always make things a lot worse. So I always say, check out a local cemetery. Usually there's lots of ghost stories in the cemeteries. Now, don't go at night, because at most cases in most states, it is considered trespassing. You can ghost hunt at any time. It can be during the day as well. You can capture EVPs during the day. But sometimes you can actually get permission to be in the local cemeteries after hours. So that's something to look forward to as well. But also look into hotels. A lot of historic hotels usually have a haunted room. And so you could spend the night in a haunted room and see if you have any experiences there. So yeah, you don't have to spend hundreds of dollars to run out there and stay at a lot of these, haunted locations, because the best ones you can find are at home. And the best opportunities to capture some of the phenomena is when you can be there more often rather than that one-time opportunity.
Jacob, what's your ideas on that, on starting out how to ghost hunt?
Yeah, so I would agree with Ross. Start off with cemeteries. And the main thing is just to get used to the gear. Because the last thing you want to do is, when you finally do line up a client or something, is have to fiddle with the gear. So I grew up in Wisconsin, for example, lots of abandoned farms, barns. That's where I would go and test out stuff. Test out my methods mainly for the gear and stuff. And I would say I would second the hotel thing, even though, you kind of have to take whatever EVPs you get with a grain of salt, right? But that's a great way to get access to a haunted site. It won't break the bank and stuff like that. And so when you're ready to try ghost hunting in more of a public space, that's a great way to do it. When I started ghostly activities, I was living in Chicago. One of the first places I hit up was the Congress Plaza Hotel. You might know it as the World Exhibition Hotel from Devil in the White City. Lots of haunted places, and go in off season, have full run of the hotel and stuff, and you can test out and check out the haunted sites there. But I would say I do avoid the very popular spots like Waverly, simply because when you get the private tour, it's usually never private, and there's a gang load of everyone else, and you wouldn't trust whatever evidence you collected anyway. So I avoid those.
Before we bring in MERLE, I got a question coming in from Trinitro in our chat room here on YouTube. Why the cemetery? The spirits are supposed to remain next to their bodies? Like, what's up with that? That doesn't make sense.
Well, you have to understand that cemeteries back in the day were a lot different than they are today. In fact, people visited cemeteries more often. They would go out there and have picnics. And so when you get into the belief that there's an attachment to a person, place, or thing, there is the belief that you can be attached to your body. You're too afraid to let go. So there have been, for hundreds of years, there's been stories of haunted cemeteries, people seeing apparitions walking through there. I've seen, light formations shoot through a cemetery. So, I think a lot of times these spirits are just waiting for their families to come back and return. And sometimes their families move on and they're still there waiting.
Merle, what's your thoughts on that question?
My thought, same as Ross. I think with cemeteries, there's a lot of trauma, a lot of sadness, a lot of energy being shed during funerals, during ceremonies. God, I still go to the cemetery and visit my mom and my grandma. So there's a lot of people bringing in that constant energy, and I feel that spirits may feed on that, which would give you the answers of EVPs or whatever you do during the investigations. But I think the constant stream of people, trauma, everything like that, anger, sadness, all make it happen.
And let me add one other thing too. Consider desecration. When people go into these cemeteries and kick down your tombstone or even take your tombstone, I know for me, that's my last marker in life. That's to let people know that I am here. And if somebody takes that or destroys that, I'd probably be haunting the place as well.
Mm-hmm.
Very true. Very true. Merle, let's get back to the location aspect with you here for a second, because, for you, you've been around and ghost hunted in a few different states and in British Columbia, all around the province. For you, what makes a location special?
History. I like to go to the most historic, old, that's what I prefer. That's my choice. Are places that are old, that have been in our past, mostly the ones that have been forgotten. I like to do as much research as I can on these type of locations and try and tell their story and go verify it in doing our research.
One of the things that I have brought up on Spaced Out Radio previous to this, gentlemen, and we're going to move on to technology and gear here momentarily, but the fact is, with a lot of these ghost teams that are out there, they try and lock down locations. They try and lock down territories. They try and lock down areas under contract, whether they're legal or not, we don't really know, in order to try and say, hey, we don't want any more ghost hunters going into this building or this bar or this hotel. To me, that's not what ghost hunting isn't about. To me, that sounds quite egotistical of a lot of ghost hunters out there. Now, I am not a ghost hunter, but I could say this. I've interviewed enough of them and I've been on enough investigations to know that if we're trying to actually solve anything in this field, we need to be working together, not trying to lock down territory, not trying to lock down locations. And Jake, I'm going to start with you on this one. Have you encountered this in your paranormal career?
So I've had it in different ways. I will say since I've moved to the West Coast, which is about 6 years ago, I've noticed this more, but I started my ghost hunting in Chicago, and there was nothing territorial about it with the different teams. The only time there was a kind of territorial dispute is if you were investigating a place that was on one of the paranormal tours. And if you were there when the tour guide came through or they brought along the tourists to do like a 2 to 4 hour ghost hunt at night, then, I got a little grief for it, but I already had permission for it. I think it's just because I muscled in, right, on that tour group's territory. But on the West Coast, I don't get it. Especially if they're not paying for access. I'm just like, wait, what? How can you have a contract without paying for access? Let's be real. So that's my bit. It's been mainly when I've had it, it's been with the tour businesses.
Okay, but what is your overall feeling of ghost teams out there trying to lock down locations?
Yeah, I think that's a bunch of BS.
It's a millimeter measuring contest.
Yeah.
Or K2, whatever.
Yeah, K2. If you got to lock down, you're definitely in the K2 range. Yeah, I don't get it. You're right. We're supposed to be. It depends on the goals of your team, but we should be working together and sharing evidence in that regard to prove if there is such a thing as an afterlife or ghost, whatever the angle of your team is. But you need to share it. I mean, I did, like Ross knows and Merle knows, when I do ghostly activities, I share everything that I picked up from every location and all the gotchas I had to. So I really think it's very selfish of teams to lock down a site.
For me, I find it exciting when I can be at a location and then I can message, for example, Jake, and be like, dude, listen to this EVP or watch this video. What do you think? I want to share that. And then I'm like I've talked to Jake and Ross before. I'm like, hey, we're going to be going to these locations, and at this date, you guys should come up too, and then we can all research together. I think that's how it should be. I think locking down locations is dumb. It's backward, and it's getting away from what we're actually doing, which is the research of our field.
Well, people tend to forget that this is all trial and error as well. So if we have an opportunity to learn from each other, to see what works and what doesn't work, that's going to help advance us. But by, being territorial, a lot of times it's just preventing us from sharing that opportunity. But also too, when one team goes in and investigates the property and walks away with similar evidence, such as an EVP, where it's a male voice and it's saying a very similar answer to another team that actually went in there, investigated a separate time, and walks away with the same thing, that same similar male voice, and answering that same question exactly the same way. That just builds credibility for both teams, and it also builds credibility for the location as well, because you have to understand, with ghost hunting, it's all about being at the right place at the right time. And one team may not always have the opportunity to go back to these places over and over and over again, because they've, locked us out. Now, you're having fewer chances of capturing that, those times of evidence, and to be able to share that. So it's unfortunate, but I also have to add too that sometimes, being locked out of a location may not be because of a group hoarding the location. It could be because also of the client themselves. They've had enough ghost hunting teams come in and they've been disrespectful, rude, destroyed property, things like that happen quite often with a lot of these teams that are not trained or not professional. And so a lot of these clients are like, I've had enough. I've worked with this one team. I like them. They have, priority over my location. So that does happen as well.
See, my outside perspective, because as I will say a number of times throughout this show and throughout other shows that we will do with the Angry Ghost Hunter here on Spaced Out Radio's YouTube channel, is this. We don't see very many professional teams. There are no professional ghost hunters outside of those who have chosen to do this full time. Ross, I would consider you a professional ghost hunter because the haunted, the paranormal, and everything about this is your career. David Weatherly would be another one. David Spinks, along those lines. But for most people out there, they are weekend warriors who are going on out, and they're going on an adventure. And look, I have no problem from an outsider perspective in people coming into the field and saying, hey, I want to go find some ghosts. I want to have an experience. But for most teams out there, they're always claiming that they're out there to find scientific evidence regarding the paranormal field. And this is my biggest beef with the paranormal in a nutshell, okay? Because A, the majority of people out there haven't conducted a scientific experiment since high school. B, we have people out there claiming that they're conducting scientific evidence. How can you do that in a non-controlled environment? How do you do that without a hypothesis and what your theories are on what you're doing? But most importantly, if you are conducting anything scientific, you have to have a result. What are you trying to solve? And that is what really makes me angry from an outsider looking in, thinking, damn, we have all of these brilliant people who could put their minds together to solve life's greatest mystery, but instead we want to hoard locations. Instead, we want to play ghost hunter, and we want to do everything that isn't necessary for the field. That's how I feel about it. How about you, Ross?
Oh, I totally agree. In fact, we could even make science a topic for the next show, because that's another issue that we have in this field, is those who claim to be scientific when a lot of times they're just imitating what they see on TV, and a lot of the television shows are not being scientific in their research. So that is definitely something I would love to cover on another show.
Absolutely. Jacob, how about for you?
So when it comes to the scientific inquiry and collection of it, I mean, no, there's nothing you can do in the field that would do that. However, you can go about and say, I'm going to do the best to capture different anomalies and see if there's a consistent pattern, because you're right, you're not going to have a controlled environment. There's no way in hell you can make this really truly a scientific type of exploration. All you can do is cast a wide net. You got gadgets for it, right? And try to pick up different data points for like environmental factors like EMF and temperature, what you can get on your cameras. And just so you know, you don't have to use full spectrum or infrared. Remember, some of the best ghostly evidence we've had has come during the day, normal light. So you don't have to invest in all that stuff. You know, auditory for EVP, the list goes on. And so when I go about setting up my experiments on ghost hunts, I'm really just trying to capture the anomalies so I can string together the patterns. Then I'll come back with a theory. And that's pretty much how I approach it. I think that's all most ghost hunters can really do. I don't know about the psychic teams.
Well, you know, Merle, how about you?
I agree with Jake, but like that's where, and Ross, what I'd like to add to that is that's why I would like the consistency of different teams, different researchers sharing their evidence, because that, I think that's what would give you a good baseline to start to move towards. You could be using your science word. But I think continuity is the best way to do it, or consistency. Sorry.
Well, people need to understand that a blip on an EMF detector, K2 millimeter, is not proof of the paranormal.
No.
And in most cases, the biggest problem we have when it comes to a lot of these teams is they really don't understand their equipment. They don't understand the environment. And so they're dependent on these pieces of equipment that they purchase to go off for whatever reason, and that's proof to them. That's all they need. They're just waiting, you know, patiently for something to just set this off. And a lot of times they're not aware that it could be normal, you know, environmental readings that is setting it off.
Man, I thought I was the big man on campus when I first bought the Talker 2. The poor man's Ovilus, made by Allison.
Oh, don't get me started on that one. Oh my God.
No, I turned it on. It was doing this blips. I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
No, I sold that.
Well, let's get into gear here, guys, as we shift topics, because you guys are all three very highly technical. I'm the guy who runs around looking at the fancy bright lights that jump off a K2 meter. You know, is the technology valued as much as it should be in the paranormal field? Or when we're ghost hunting, do we need all of this high-tech gear to really investigate the paranormal? Jake.
Jake.
Or Merle, let's start with you.
Yeah, go Merle. I've been flapping my gums a lot. Go for
Come
it.
on, Merle Bird.
Come on, Merle.
People lean on gear too much, and I think that the evolution of gear right now is hokey. Like when you take Ross's favorite phone apps.
Oh my God! Don't
trigger.
That's a whole other show, I tell you.
Throwing that out there, but people, like, I follow Instagram. Like, we have a really big Instagram following for the Paranormal Road Trippers, and I notice a lot of people running around Waverly Hills with their ring light and their phone apps, and they think that they're catching demons and previous prisoners and that, and it's like. People lean on gear too much. Give me an audio recorder and a video camera that has the capability of being normal or IR, and I'm good to go, and an EDI plus.
Mm-hmm. No, I one of the things is, you yourself could be a great tool on an investigation. Trust your senses. But also too, if you're trying to validate these experiences, you do have to go to that level and try to collect some sort of readings. You know, I've always said you can't depend on one piece of equipment to prove the existence of ghosts. I've always taught my team that if you're getting one interesting reading, try to get other readings to validate that one reading. And that's where a lot of these teams fails, because they're so focused on that EMF reading as proof to the paranormal. They're not busy trying to see if there's other things going on in the environment to support that maybe possible odd reading. So, you know, we do need to come together and understand the environments. And one of the biggest problems that we have in this field is there's no such thing as a ghost meter. There's no device out there that's going to tell you, yes, you have a ghost in your home. So what we do, or the best that we can do as paranormal investigators, is we have to read the environment. We have to understand the environment. We have to know if there are changes in the environment that can't be explained. And so that's why we use just regular devices that will determine changes in the EMF field, changes in the temperature field, barometers, all that kind of stuff, just to see if there is something odd going on.
And I think baselines are super important too.
Baselines are very important, and a lot of teams don't understand that or do that. They don't take the time. Right now, I think our biggest problem in this field is we've got a lot of lazy ghost hunters. They're so focused on these, devices that are so suggestive that it makes ghost hunting a lot easier than it should be. No one wants to do the work. No one wants to go back and watch 8 hours of video or 8 hours of audio. And it's even double that, when you think you might have something, and reviewing and reviewing and reviewing. And to be honest, a lot of people that are in this field, they volunteer their time because it's not a career. Like you said, Dave, they're, weekend warriors in this field. They've got their day jobs to do.
Yeah.
They don't
and I don't
time.
say that as I don't say that as an insult.
No, and no one should, because again, it is volunteer. People do have to, make money and raise their families and, take care of their home. And so it's one of those things that, yeah, if you are going to devote your time and do it correctly, you do have to understand there is a lot more time you have to put into this. It's a lot of tedious reviewing.
People want the high of the phone app. They don't want to sit there for 8 hours and ask for a knock, right?
But guys, if you're somebody like me who is wanting to get more into this, but I don't have a lot of money to be spending on frivolous ghost gear, how do I do it? How do I know that I'm getting my money's worth? Because here's what I've learned in my part time of being a ghost investigator and watching you guys. What may work for you may not necessarily work for me. So, for instance, I may have a lot of success with a ghost box, but Ross, it may not work for you, or Jacob, it may not work for you as well as it does for me. How do we choose the gear that we are going to be using if we want to start investing in ourselves and in our hobby, so to speak?
Well, I would definitely turn this one over to Jake, because this guy has spent thousands and thousands of dollars on all that equipment that you see on the ghost hunting shows and on all the websites. And he is definitely one of those people that I turn to when I'm looking into investing in some of the equipment.
Yeah. So, I tell everyone who's getting into it, just focus on one part of data collection until you get comfortable to branch out. And the first thing you can do, and the easiest thing you can do, is EVP collection, electronic voice phenomena. Those ghosty voices that you've heard on the shows, and you can just use your phone for it. Now make sure you put in airplane mode, and just start asking the questions at the suspected haunt. Just start simply there until you get really good at listening for the voices, because you got to train your ear for it. And really the biggest thing is be consistent with your practice. Pick device you're comfortable with. I actually started with cameras. I'm a very visual guy, so I started with digital camera, taking pictures, setting up, seeing how light refracts, all that good stuff off of space. And then just go deeper and become more practiced. And when you get really comfortable with it and you've got fine-tuned your ear to really pick out an EVP or something, then think about moving up to a higher powered audio recorder, maybe add in the digital camera or a camcorder. It can be a low end one too, just regular handy cam, and just then start thinking about setting up experiments and what you want to capture in that regard. And that's why I tell everyone to start with, usually it's an EVP. EVP is probably the best one for folks to start training on.
Well, the reason why I asked that question, Jake, and panel in general, is because there's a lot of people out there who want to take this so seriously that they're willing to forego food money or rent money in order to get that high-tech gear that they see on television or they see other paranormal investigators running around with. Like, I don't know. I always forget what it's called. Mike tells me every time, that one with the stick people that are kind of walking around. What's that? The SLS camera or something like that?
I have so much to say.
But I mean, we always want something that's shiny, new, and looks really techy, because real techie stuff makes us look smart, or at least
Facebook
we perceive it to be.
That's where I get my cameras.
So what do you want to start on, Jay? Come on.
When it comes to gear, I would like to say don't even bother with.
Sure.
Okay, so I mean,
the static thing. Go off on that one.
Oh, the okay, so with the static thing that I got, well, there's a couple of one.
The one we both have, the
Paranologies, I think is it's the static detector. Yeah, that thing worked for 30 seconds and then broke on me. It was poorly made. Now, again, I can only talk from my experience. I paid for it with my own money. There is no expectation of good review. Yeah, I turned that thing on and it went off just like that in all of 30 seconds, unusable ever since then. It was totally a piece of crap, like 3D printed. I thought it was going to break in my hand. That's one I wouldn't recommend. But, if I'm going to tell someone to go out and get some good gear to start with, I mean, take the approach of your phone first. And if EVP is really your bag and stuff, I'd say start with the H1N zoom. I know it's kind of pricey. It's like $100 US. So what would that be, like 120, 130 Canadian?
$29.99.
Okay. Because that's a high quality audio recorder. A lot of journalists use it. And it just uses SD cards. Take it out. You can pop it into whatever computer you've got. But the one thing I think most people with EVP analysis don't focus on is you need a really good set of cans, aka headphones.
Right.
But also you got to learn how to use the software, and you don't have to spend a lot for the software. Like Audacity is free if you've got a PC, Windows. On Mac, it doesn't work with it anymore with the higher operating systems. But the best thing I can say is learn how to do the analysis, and how to use the tools is just as important as what kind of recorder you got, because you got to cut it, you got to sample it, you got to take out the noise. There's a lot of stuff, and I would say that's when you should look for kind of a mentor when it comes to the analysis part.
But Joe in our chat room brings up a good point here. Okay. He goes, basically his comment is string across a doorway with a little bell on it. It doesn't have to be high tech. Mike, I know you use that at the Bailey house, I believe.
I did. I actually had a really good hit on that. What would happen? We had fishing line with like a fishing bell, and it was on there, and we did a lot of tests before we left the actual house. We moved the line like the Ultimate Warrior on the ropes, and we hit it hard and we flicked it because we wanted to see if we can get it to move, because it's a waste of time if it's just going to fall off. So it was secured, and the fishing line was extremely tight, like you could play a guitar note on it type. And we left the actual house. We had it was pretty old fashioned. We had baby powder, and we had a tape recorder going. So we went back to like the 1960s. And
but it's still effective.
It is, and so we have our camcorder going, and you hear footsteps upstairs, which was not us. Nobody was in the house. So this is as controlled environment as you can get, in my opinion. We were in the visitor center at the other side of the property, and we were just trying this experiment. I think we were just having snacks or whatever. But anyhow, you hear footsteps, and you hear creaking of the floor, and then you hear kind of noises by the step, and then you see the bell move slightly, and then it just drops. Some of the best evidence I think we've ever captured, because you can debate that it was a malfunction with the fishing line and the bell, but the point of that is we tried so hard to debunk it before we even put the stuff up. So I love going back with old-fashioned ghost hunting gear.
Yeah,
I always encourage people to don't forget our roots. There's film, there's the audio cassettes. You know, a lot of that stuff, that's where we started. That's where all the first evidence was collected on. So I have no problem with people going old school.
Yeah.
And a lot of that stuff is really cheap now. You can get a really nice camera at Goodwill because no one wants to do film anymore. You know? So yeah, definitely consider old school.
Well, but it also shows, Ross, that you don't have to break the bank
Oh.
in order to make this happen.
No, you don't. But again, you're dealing with a situation because ghost hunting is so popular. People are watching these television shows and they see all the gadgets that they're using and they feel that that's the gold to ghost hunting. So they feel that they have to, you know, spend big bucks for a lot of this equipment. And you don't. You really don't. And like I said, even Jay can tell you that half of that equipment that you see on those shows is just junk.
It's just, yeah. I mean, and I still kick it old school. Like I've got my RCA cassette recorder. I got a Polaroid that I use.
That's what I want.
Yeah,
That's what makes me do.
one of my big things is I'm a big fan of trigger objects. So I'll put the jacks out, bounce the ball and collect the little jack things, and I'd mark them with chalk and stuff and measure movement by it. So I still do that. Mind you, I do have a camcorder pointed at the stuff, and let's not forget, you still need to record the evidence somehow, you know, if we're talking analog, just like you did with your camcorder with the string test and stuff. So, you know, I would say you still kind of need to spend to make sure you record the entire ghost hunt and stuff that you've collected there, but you don't need to break the bank with, I mean, they've got $70 camcorders.
Is there a budget that you would give yourself to start out ghost hunting, Mike?
$400 Canadian will get you going with a decent.
So about $12 American gets you going. Is what you're saying.
Audio recorder. Jake and I have talked about this too. I think we're both audio recorder snobs. We like the WAV versus the MP3. Because if you're recording in WAV, it doesn't condense your audio like an MP3 recorder. So I think it's worth it. My weapon of choice is the H2N. I quite like that. Sorry, the H4N. And it does the 360. And I that's my go-to for all of my investigations. And I think you can buy one of those and I buy things secondhand. I have no shame. If I can get a deal, I'll do it. You know that, Dave.
Yeah, we love Amazon Warehouse.
Well, you're Ukrainian, so why wouldn't you? Right?
Yeah, Amazon Warehouse or Facebook Marketplace, and that's where I bought my H4N for like $180. I was good with that.
So $475 American.
Yeah, and
I always tell people, you know, if you're going to go out and become a ghost hunter, the two things that you definitely need is a good audio recorder and a good video recorder.
Yeah.
Never sacrifice quality, because whenever you do capture evidence, you want to be able to review it over and over and over again. And when you buy something that's just cheap and it's going to give you shitty quality, then it's just going to be questionable whenever you try to present it as evidence.
Gentlemen, I have some questions from our YouTube chat room here before we change topics here. And let's start off with Ghost in Media. Do you think spirits prove the existence of a higher being, such as a god per se?
Who wants to take that one?
I'll take it. I'd say no, because we don't know what spirits are, and it could just be something from another dimension. Like, we have no idea. Could be something from, you know, we hear about parallel universes. What happens if there's a time loop? Something like it's just a regular person who's going about their business in a regular. So I would say no.
It could be a narcissistic ghost stating it's a god. You know,
don't know. Or I don't think to be a demon. You never know.
Yeah.
Well, they are everywhere, according to some. All right. Next question comes from Joe here, and that is, why do ghost hunters always go to the most haunted places? Isn't every place haunted?
I like to go to the unknown places. I like to seek out forgotten places, old mining towns or gold rush towns that have been forgotten. They've been destroyed, but there's still the bones of buildings there. Or old graveyards from the 1800s that have been grown over that nobody remembers or even wants to go to. I like to go there, and those are my favorite places versus going to high traffic areas, because I I think the high traffic ghost hunting, like Waverly Hills, I think some of them spirits probably feel like zoo animals sometimes with the amount of traffic going through there. And would I want to go to Waverly Hills? Absolutely. I won't lie to you. But then I just feel that they get tired of that and too much energy going through there.
Jacob.
Well,
So, I mean, I would look at it this way. Like, if you're a ghost hunter and you're out to get evidence and stuff, you know, if it's well-known haunt, it's got a reputation of giving evidence. So, I mean, I wouldn't pass up Waverly Hills, but I'm going as a paranormal tourist, mainly in that regard. So I can see why you would go to Most Haunted, because you're bound to get something, and a lot of people want that, you know, ooh, geez, feel that they got the blip on the K2, or the geophone went off, or they got an apparition. So I can see that. I prefer not to do the larger places for myself. But
Ross, final word.
Well, the thing is again, we don't understand enough when it comes to an actual haunting. So, you know, we, again, like, you know, Jake said, you know, the thing is you're probably going to have better chances of collecting evidence from a place that has been mostly reported as being haunted. But could ghosts be everywhere? Sure. But obviously there are some entities out there that are more active and will interact with the environment and interact with the living. So if you are trying to collect that evidence, those are the places you want to be, rather than something that's just going to sit in the corner and stare at you and not do anything. So, yeah.
All right, another question coming up from Antonio. Does the panel advise pro or negative on YouTube spirit box celebrities? Is it a waste of time watching them in terms of scientific credibility? Jake, you're already smiling and laughing on this one. You get the first run.
Yes.
Oh, great. Okay. So, for one thing, you don't know how much of those videos are edited. Because with the spirit box, we've tested this a great deal with the ghost. Generally speaking, it's such gibberish, but you will get random hits that could make sense once you stitch them together. So it is very rare for you to get a direct response through a spirit box. So of course, I'm already saying, no, it's not that credible. And if you do want to have a more credible experience, set it on a static channel. Ask your EVP questions and see if you get a response through it. Because if you do, that will be far more credible than just random that you're interpreting as a word that's not there.
That's good R2D2 right there.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good try.
Well,
very strong.
I do want to you know, say this too, and I'll probably get a lot of crap from this, but I'm not going to mention any names. But it's already been proven that certain individuals who are out there trying to reach celebrities, especially right after death, were actually putting audio recorders, I should say interviews from shows that they had done, and then filtered it into their spirit box session. So when they were playing it to the audience, of course, you were hearing the celebrity talking off of something that was already pre-recorded and added into the audio. So that has happened, and it's been proven. So that there's all kinds of problems with when it comes to the spirit box, because it is very suggestive. And I say this because I know there's a lot of people that are fans of the spirit box, and that's fine. But I would encourage, if you are going to try and focus on spirit boxes, go with a static channel. Then it's more credible when you do get a clear voice out of it. But I've proven on many occasions, as Jake was saying, we've done hours and hours of testing on this, where we've even recorded hours of this spirit box going through the cycle, and then took that recording and played it to an unsuspecting audience and told them it was live. And they were still able to hear things that they wanted to hear off of something that was already pre-recorded. So that just proves how suggestive it is. And then, of course, you know, we want to hear, we tend to hear what we want to hear. And so a lot of times it frustrates me for those who, you know, want to focus on just spirit box as their goal to, you know, the investigation. You ask a question and you'll sit there and wait through all the gibberish until you hear something that you understand. But who's to say that first part of gibberish was the answer that it was trying to tell you, but you didn't understand it? So it's all very selective hearing when it comes to a lot of that feedback that you get from a spirit box. And there's been a lot of cases too where, you know, somebody will say, well, I hear this, and another person will say, no, I hear this, and that becomes a big argument. So there's just too many flaws with that device, and it's unfortunate that there's so many teams that are so codependent on ghost boxes that that's all they depend on during their investigation. They'll pull out a spirit box, and then that's all they do all night, and they miss out on so many opportunities.
Yeah, so I would say, because how I've tested this, I did a podcast on it, is record your spirit box sessions. And when you call out what you think you heard, next day go back and play back that recording. Was it really that what you heard? Because every time I've done it, it was gibberish.
But don't get me wrong, you know, and even Jake had brought this up. There are times when it's just chance too. When you're listening at all these different radio stations going through their cycle over and over again, every once in a while, when you say, what is your name? You'll have an announcer saying, hey, I'm Dave Scott. And there you go. They think that Dave's haunting the place.
Classic Dave.
Well, Mark here brings up a good point, and he says, can you then explain how an EMF K2 goes off in the middle of a forest while sitting on a tree with no one around?
Well, that could be your cell phone itself. If you did not turn off your cell phone, you can actually get readings, because your cell phone is constantly taking in data. And so that's how you get your text messages and emails. So a lot of times that can set it off as well. So if you're in the woods, that's great. You're definitely going to have a less chance of getting an EMF reading in the woods or in the middle of a cemetery. So a lot of times people make the mistake of not turning their cell phone on airplane mode.
All right, makes sense. All right, let's get to another question here as we continue on here on Spaced Out Radio. Tristan is asking, what's the most physical experience that you guys have had with entities?
Who wants to go first on that one?
I got choked once. Got choked at a house in Merritt, British Columbia. This is one of those times I'm like, nah, ghosts can't actually do things like that. I've heard of it happening. I've seen people get scratched, but they can't actually grab your throat and squeeze. But whatever it was grabbed my throat and squeezed. We were basically just doing an EVP session, and I know we had a sensitive person with us that can talk to ghosts and that. But she even said, she's like, there's somebody here that doesn't like you. Something's going to happen to you. And I'm like, okay, I'll duly noted. And we were upstairs in the master bedroom, and then the sensitive, she was like, something's getting really upset at you right now. Something's going to happen. And I'm like, duly noted again. And all of a sudden I asked, is there someone here? Can you give me a sign and have a chat with me? And all of a sudden I felt a brush of air go like right past me. And then all of a sudden something grabbed my throat and started squeezing. Needless to say, I tucked tail and ran outside. And that would probably be one of the most scariest physical things that's happened to me.
How about you, Jake?
So it doesn't happen very often with me. And Pross knows I'm probably one of the most skeptical when it comes to investigating. And if I do feel something, I will normally disregard it. However, we did an investigation at the Georgetown Inn, and I was in one of the rooms, and it was, I believe, where it was where one of the help staff lived in that apartment. And I was sitting on the air conditioner, which, you know, it has a sign that says, don't sit. It was the kind of those air conditioner wall unit things by the windowsill. And there was a big old sign that said, you know, don't sit or place anything on it. So of course I'm sitting on it. I could feel someone push me from behind, but the only thing from behind was the window itself. And I was going to throw that out, but I had an A.G.H.O.S.T with me and it had a flare about that time. So I kept it in my report. But a lot of times I throw this stuff out simply because, the way the mind works, when you got a little adrenaline, you might have a little, some nerves about being at a haunted location. I always get a little jazzed up. So I always think about a psychological factor of, did I actually imagine it? So
Ross, I'm going to get you to give the final word because we only have about 10 minutes left.
Well, for my physical experience, I actually was at Alcatraz, and we actually were investigating a lot of places that weren't open to the public. So they took us into the morgue, and I was the first to go down into the cellar area. It's all underground. And this is where, when it was a military base, this is where they actually used to keep the gunpowder. So I'm the first one to enter this room, dirt floor, brick walls and ceiling. And my members are starting to filter in behind me, but I want to get the widest angle shot of the entrance. So I'm backing up with my camera, looking through the view screen, and I'm slowly backing up to get the wider and wider angle. And one of the members puts their hand on my shoulder and stops me. So I turned around to apologize because I must have backed them into the corner, and there was nobody there, no
Wow.
one around me. And I felt the weight of a man's hand, the pressure of the fingers. And again, it physically stopped me as I was taking a step backwards. I was expecting to see a living person behind me, and there was nobody there.
Incredible. Gentlemen, I want to hit the final topic for tonight before we move on. And we always, give a lot of laughs, at least I do, because I make fun of it here on Spaced Out Radio, is when I go cruising websites for paranormal teams, why the hell does every team have a team skeptic? Shouldn't honestly, there's
you need to have
always
your ranks. You need to have founder, lead investigator,
and they're always pictured like this. Like really, shouldn't everybody out in the field have their own set of skepticism? Do we really need someone to say, "Oh, I'm so skeptic. I'm skeptical more than you," and that is rain. That is not water running from a sink. That is rain. Somebody threw raisins at me. It's not rocks.
The funniest thing, though, that I find a lot of times these skeptics are the ones the first to be running out of the room screaming whenever
100%.
they hear something strange. So, yeah, really skeptic. But skepticism is so important in this field because it's so easy to label every little thing and say it's a ghost. It's a lot more work to try and debunk everything. And unfortunately, we're all biased in our own way in how we approach the field of paranormal research. So I've always encouraged people to have a fair share of skepticism. You don't want to point at every little thing and say it's a ghost. Do the work, the research. But to have a skeptic on the team, and this is funny too, because I was approached by the Skeptic Society, and they wanted a ghost hunter to come out and speak to them about ghost hunting. And they said everybody in the field turned them down except me. I was more than happy to speak to them because they were just as curious as I am about the field. They just want to know what we do. And so I have no problem talking to a hardcore skeptic and have a nice friendly debate on what we think is actually occurring in this field.
How about for you, Merle?
I agree with Ross. Everyone's got to have a skeptic, a lead investigator, a founder, a co-founder, and a trainee. But I like kind of sizing up skeptics because we've done a lot of fundraisers, and you'll get the guy coming, his girlfriend will be all, I'm ghost hunting, I'm a sensitive ghost hunter, but then he's like this with his leather jacket on and looking at his wrist all the time to go home. I like to hone in on those guys and try and get them a reaction, and more times than not, you're never disappointed. And they, like Ross said, they're usually the first to run or break when they're doing the ghost hunt. It's fantastic.
Oh, it's hilarious to me. I don't know why I find that so funny, but it's irritating as hell to me because if you have to announce that you are the skeptic of the team, is that really a position of anything?
I think everybody on the team should have that level of skepticism. You don't need just that one person to be the hardcore
but Ross,
skeptic.
it also shows, and I apologize for cutting you off,
No
from
problem.
an outsider's perspective, it also shows that we're titling people who don't deserve titles.
Well, I get you. Yeah, definitely.
But I think healthy skepticism, you know the word, Keeps
No,
us
tell us, Merle. Tell us, what's that word?
Spell it out.
skepticism.
Can you spell it?
Keeps us in check when we're getting excitable on our investigations. It'll keep you questioning yourself and the team questioning the evidence that they have obtained. So I think a happy medium of skepticism is always good.
That's a tough one for Merle.
I don't know why. Skepticism. There we go.
Okay, so if we should all have a level of skepticism, Ross, where do we draw the line? Because I think a lot of people in the paranormal use the word skepticism that they have to debunk everything. I remember a famous episode of the original Ghost Hunters where they were in some hotel in Arizona where one of the team leads was sleeping in a bed. He had a camera on him. You clearly see the blanket flipped off his foot. His foot didn't move. And the other guy was like, oh, that's fake. That's fake. That's not good evidence. And it started this argument about it because you could obviously see the millions of viewers who saw that episode could see he didn't move his leg. But the other person was like, oh, all you had to do is twitch your leg and your blanket's going to go flying like that. Some people go out of their way because there's a huge difference between skepticism and using your brain to find logical explanation and then just being a prick. You know what I'm saying?
Well, you can always be too skeptical and just, debunk everything and never accept the fact that some things that we experience in the field, you just have to walk away and go, that was interesting. We don't have the answers, but it was definitely interesting. Now, I do like what Jake applies when he goes over evidence, and I think he should talk about that.
Well, so I'm kind of probably one of the biggest skeptics on our team because I throw out a lot. And Canada Mike, you've been on calls with me when I've essentially destroyed my evidence, and it was really good evidence.
Yeah,
but I mean, all it is it's right. It's the logical stepping through it. It's like, okay, Occam's razor. What's the most simplest solution or response for it? How can I try to recreate this? So, Dave, like you were talking, the thing flinging off and the foot didn't move. I mean, okay, really all you have to do is, did someone have a string on? Is this some kind of joke that we just saw? And it's as simple as that.
But what I'm saying,
wait a minute, because he didn't get to it. It's what your 3 points of, what was that you always say whenever you're reviewing your evidence?
I don't know. You got me here because I've gone from 3 to 5.
You have 3 points of that you have to go through before you'll accept it as evidence. And I forget how you always put it. There's always this. There's 3 different things that you have to go through.
Geez, I'll probably have to go back out to the poster.
You said something smart back then. Now you can't remember
this is why I publish everything to my blog, people, because I'm old and forgetful. That's why.
All right, guys, we got like less than 2 minutes here to go. We got to wrap this up because we're going to be doing this once a month here on Spaced Out Radio, the final Wednesday of every month, starting at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Ross, your final word.
Well, if anything, I just want to make sure that when we are going out there and trying to build this unity in the paranormal field, please, don't be hoarding your evidence. Don't be hoarding the locations. We're going to learn more and a lot quicker if we're able to share and communicate with each other. Put the egos aside, just put the drama aside and work with those that are around you. Because we really could advance ourselves a lot quicker if we could get rid of all that.
Jake, your final word.
I would say don't be afraid to practice, learn the gear, learn how to analyze it, and share it so we can all learn from you.
Merle.
I agree with Ross and Jake said, and I will add, with the ego thing, put it to the side. Like there's lots of times I'll message Jake, how do I do this? What do you do here? I've been ghost hunting for a long time, and I know he has too, but you're always learning from everyone. Same with Ross. I'll ask Ross questions. Always ask questions and share your evidence and don't hoard.
Well, that is it. Merle from Paranormal Road Trippers, Jacob Rice, Ross Allison, thank you so much for this first of many editions of the Angry Ghost Hunter, which will happen the final Wednesday of every month right here at youtube.com/spaced out radio. New topics, new ways to ghost hunt, new ways to make Ross angry, pardon me.
We're going to trigger him next week.
We are going to trigger him next time. That is our goal. On behalf of me, Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio, I want to say stay tuned. In 1 hour's time, we're going to go live with the big show right here at youtube.com/spaced out radio, right here on Twitch and right here on Periscope. So stay tuned. We got a lot more happening this evening. Go grab a drink, go grab a coffee, go put in and have a hot shower. I don't know. Do what you got to do, because the Angry Ghost Hunter is out for the night. Spaced Out Radio coming up in 1 hour's time. We'll talk to you then. Take care.